Thank you. Welcome everyone to our new edition of Tech Tuesday. And today we have a very exciting discussion about starting a tech company and the insights of being part of a technology startup or actually starting one and working in the technology field. I am Luis Garcia, Vice President of Emerging Technologies at Full Sail University. We have a great panel today. I'll start with Alejandro Garcia-Tunon. He's Director of Technology, Ghostpunch Games. Sorry for messing that out, Alejandro. You can and we have Bobby Jones, CEO and founder of Purple Rock Scissors. We have Marcos Meson, co-founder of Visual Blasters. And we have Tim Naylor, co-founder of ExoTools. What I'm gonna do, I'm gonna go each name again so that you can introduce yourselves. And we're very excited to have you. Thank you so much for joining us. So why don't we go one by one? And we'll start with you, Alejandro.
Hi, like Luis said, thank you, by the way, for having us, Luis. Like Luis said, I'm Alejandro. I'm the Director of Technology for Ghostpunch Games. I personally start in relation. That didn't last very long. I very quickly went into the game industry. I started in a company called Vicarious Visions. While there, I got to work on a lot of different platforms and some really, really great games, including the Marvel Ultimate Alliance series. Marvel Ultimate Alliance 1 was a launch title for the Wii. I got to work on Marvel Ultimate Alliance 2 and the Guitar Hero series for the Wii as well. I built an engine for that, as well as Transformers for the DS. I was born and raised in South Florida, so I was always looking for a way to get back and do what I love, but in South Florida. And I was introduced to this group of guys called Darkside Game Studios, and they hired me on as their lead. And when I joined, it was maybe 12 or so people, mostly artists, no programmers. They were an art outsourcing house that wanted to get into game development, and so I started as the first programmer there, built up the department. In the course of about 7 years, we got to work on small stuff, including like porting Flash games to iPhone, to like building full-on mobile projects using well-known IP like Ratchet and to helping companies out with their full AAA console games. We built DLC for Borderlands and built the multiplayer of Spec Ops: The Line. We did about a third of the Borderlands pre-sequel. Eventually, that company shut down while building a game for Microsoft. From there, I went to Magic Leap, where I was the head of technology operations for their first-party game development studio at Magic Leap. In 2018, we launched the product. We launched a few experiences. I was very proud of what we had done, and I kind of felt like it was time to come back to video games after about 4 years. So the people who had founded Darkside Game Studios had, after the company shut down, rebuilt as Ghostpunch Games, and they invited me on as a partner of Ghostpunch Games. And that was at the beginning of 2019 that I joined, and since then, we've been working on a bunch of stuff, including, again, helping out with Land series, working with 2K on the Civilization project, and we are actively working with a publisher on a game that's going to release in the next couple of years, where we are the main developers. Just a lot of really great projects going on right now. Unfortunately, I can't talk about most of them, but that's where we are.
I think that you established very well the kind of projects that you work on. Thank you so much, Alejandro. I gotta continue on with you, Bobby. Who are you? What are you working on these days?
Hi guys, my name is Bobby Jones. I'm the founder and CEO of Purple Rock Scissors. We are a strategic creative agency here in Orlando with like heavy focus on technology at the core of what we do. So our clients are currently that we've been working with for almost a decade. We work with Facebook, Instagram, Oculus, and we do a ton of work with Disney, Lego, Cartoon Network. So that's just a handful of them. I won't bore you with the whole list, but we do everything from app development to go-to-market strategy work for those clients, and pretty proud to say that we're one of the only shops in the country that we get to develop directly on the Facebook technology stack, which is really cool and fun thing to be a part of. So yeah, that's us. We're located here in Orlando. We're a team of about just short of 60, and we love it. So yeah, and if you're over at Full Sail or you want to get to know us, definitely hit me up.
Thank you, Bobby. That's awesome. I'm gonna move on to Team Naylor, and who has a very, very interesting background in both technology and special effects. Go ahead, Tim.
Cool. Thanks. I'm Tim Naylor, co-founder of ExoTools. My background, I was at Industrial Light and Magic for about 10 years doing visual effects, specifically with like creature focused. Left and started a tech company to do entertainment technology for the movie industry. We wound up selling a bunch of our technology to Autodesk, and that's now in a bunch of their products. And then we sold that company to another company and left. And then I went to join Facebook, and I'm part of their artificial intelligence group. That's my day job. My night job is with ExoTools, and we do software development and consulting services for technology companies, robotic companies, gaming companies, large tech companies. We've worked with Google, we've worked with Facebook, we've worked with 2K Games, we've worked with Autodesk. So we work with a lot of kind of the span between gaming, technology, and even like little robotics companies to write plugins for them. So a lot of interesting stuff when you do consulting. You kind of get to see a lot of different industries and companies and their cultures and how they operate. So it's a little bit about me.
Thank you so much, Tim. Wow, what a different background from everyone, right? Yeah, and I'm gonna finish up with my friend Marcos. And so Marcos, who are you? What are you working on these days?
Hey everyone. First of all, thank you for this privilege to participate. Really appreciate it. Yeah, my name is Marcos. I'm originally from Argentina. I live here in the US, and my brother and I started a business called Visual Blasters. But basically, the one thing that stands out from our company is this app that we created, which is called Flip a Clip. Flip a Clip. It's basically a traditional animation. My background is in motion graphics and then graphic design, now more UX, user experience, but doing a little bit of everything. Our team is growing, and yeah, Flip a Clip on a monthly basis has millions of active users, and we're growing, especially in these times where everybody's at home. And so everybody is actually animating frame by frame or page by page, and then you flip them. That's basically what it's been, and it's really cool to see a lot of influencers using it, such as like there's this one guy who does a lot of work for Red Bull, and because they love all these like rotoscoping style. I don't know if some of you are familiar with that, but it's just creating lines in front of live action footage. And then like influencers from, I don't know, there's this one girl, her name is Tootie McNootie. That's her handle on TikTok. And I think she has like over 4 or 5 million followers. We just did a video shoot with her not too long ago, before this whole craziness started with the pandemic. But it's been really neat to see how many ages of all groups are creating content, and they don't have to be professional. So it's really neat to see how they're growing. So yeah, and I'm the, again, co-founder, graduated at Full Sail in the digital media class.
Thank you so much, Marcos. And just for the public to clarify, everyone in this panel is a Full Sail graduate, and including me. So thank you so much for the introductions. For those folks watching us right now, what we're going to do is I'm going to go over a few questions that we have prepared and that I have prepared. And but you please feel free to submit your questions in the comments section of Facebook, and we're gonna be answering your questions in the second half of this conversation. So let's talk some tech. Let's get started. I always like to start people with the story about how they fell in love with technology. And for me, my love of technology started very early in life. When I was about 8 years old, my dad asked me, asked us, me and my brothers, if we wanted a computer for Christmas. Now, we're talking about 1982 or 1983. We're talking about a very long time ago. It wasn't a common thing to have. And we say, why not? And we thought of it almost like another video game. So we got ourselves, or my dad bought us an Atari 400, which has 60K of RAM. And again, this is the early 80s in Venezuela, South America, not really the place where innovation comes from. But when we bought this computer, the store that sold it also sold it with a course of programming and of the language called BASIC. And so we took this 1 week course when we bought the computer, and I've been behind the computer ever since. So for those out there in the panel, love to know your story, how you fell in love with technology. And so I'll start with you, Tim. What was the moment in which you fell in love with technology?
For me, it was always movie centric. So it was always movie technology. It was always visual effects. It was, I think there's a bunch of Hallmark movies, because I'm a super geek and a super sci-fi geek, that I can remember exactly the movie theater and the seat I was in and remembering watching it. So like, for example, Terminator 2, the whole liquid Terminator, just, I know exactly where I sat. I know exactly what theater I was in. I was in Michigan. I was away from home, and I watched the movie. And I don't know if I was I hope I wasn't the only one, but it took me days to like process the whole film and how they might have done it and what kind of technology they use and how they do that. I just couldn't stop thinking about it. The same thing happened with Jurassic Park. And I mean, it just kept growing from there, that I wanted to figure out how they did it. And that kind of, I made me try to look into it. Like, could I actually do something like that as a living? So it was definitely movie centric for me.
That's so awesome. How about you, Bobby? What
Dude.
was the moment in which you fell in love with technology?
Dude, you ready for this?
Yes.
Atari 800 right here.
Oh my God.
Atari 800. Yeah.
Mic drop.
Yeah. So we bought the 400. They released both the 400 and the 800 at the same time. Atari did.
Yeah. Same thing, man. Same story. Very similar. My parents wanted to get a computer for us, and we got this one, and I started just tinkering. And I think there was like a tutorial that came with it on how to write software. Like, I think I made some micro accounting software, and I'm like, this is really cool. And so just sort of fell in love with it from there on. Just always had an affinity for it.
That's super cool.
Yeah.
Alejandro, let's go with you. When you remember when you fell in love with technology?
Yeah, honestly, it's hard to identify a moment, like a singular moment, because it was just kind of been part of my life. My father is an engineer, is a structural engineer. And he taught himself back in the early 80s. AutoCAD, that was really a thing that people used widely before. There was a thing that was taught in school. So we always had a family computer that was his work computer. And I remember, like, as a kid, sneaking into the office and seeing him work on it, and it was like a portal to this magic construct. And so it was always just part of my life when there was a black and white laptop, an old compact that was discarded when I was a kid, and that I just kind of inherited it. And from then it was a thing, like from a book. I remember a fan trip in second grade where everyone like chose the books that they wanted to bring, and I chose this game in BASIC book that I was doing the entire like 2-week road trip. So it was always just kind of part of my life. And I remember as a kid having the thought, like, you know, it would be cool to make video games. But I just kind of discounted it as like, that's something that, you know, other people do or special people do, or whatever. And in college, taking programming courses, I just had the epiphany, like, wait a second. People who make video games are just programmers who make video games specifically. Like, I'm a pretty good programmer. I could probably just do that. Awesome. And until a few years later, when I was at video games, that an old family friend of ours came to visit, who on that same road trip that I was taking the programming book, we visited, and she said, do you know what you told me when you were about this big, what you do when you grow up? And I said, I have no recollection. I have no idea. She says, you told me back then that you wanted to make games for the TV. And I don't remember that at all, but it's always just kind of been there. It's just, that's part of who I am.
That's super cool. How about you, Marcos? When did you fall in love with technology?
Yeah, at a very young age. My dad, where we used to live in Argentina, was really far in the middle of nowhere. I don't even know if you can find that in the map. No, just kidding. It's north of Argentina. And this is like late 80s, early 90s, where and he had this TV show, and it was all VHS then. And so to me, it was crazy to see all this technology, the backstage, but in a small town. I also had a teacher who, I wasn't the best student per se, but my communications teacher, she said, you're going to fail at this. This is not your thing ever. And that kind of like proved her wrong, I guess. But the same thing, you know, falling in love with what I saw around me, and I wanted to do that. And since then, it just grew in me. You know, Legos, problem solving, all those things that really got me into it.
That's great. So let's move on. I mean, everyone in this panel has either started a company or been involved in the startup of a company. Actually, my early years of my career were all in startups. And first writing software, I was a computer programmer for a while, and then I moved on into being an executive during the .com era, and I've done other entrepreneurial efforts after that, even inside the university. And it takes a particular mindset to work at a startup, and as people fall in love with the idea of starting companies, but the reality is the majority of the companies fail, and very few get to be successful. So I'd like to get you a little into the mindset that it takes to start a company, and then we'll move into the rewarding parts and the difficult parts. But we'll do that later. But I'm really intrigued by this idea of how the idea of starting a company came about. And I'll start with you, Bobby.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I never really intended to start a company, and I think sometimes maybe that's why it works. I think one of the biggest flaws I see is people overthinking things, like, you know, building crazy business plans. And while those are good to kind of, you know, vector off of and see if it makes sense what your idea is, and if it needs to pivot or change it, you do. But at the same time, I never made a business plan. I never really intended to start a company, but I just was very passionate about what I did. And I think for my greatest advice is, I think you've got to have like a lot of passion for what it is you're doing, because you have to put like just tons of hours against it to get any results. And I think when I started, I was doing that out of just pure love for what I did. It's almost an addiction. And one thing led to another, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna have a buddy help me, you know. And then next thing you know, I've got 5 buddies helping me. And then, you know, it grew over time. And I learned and navigated those waters of operating a business and learning how to treat staff and, you know, really figuring out what it means to run a company. But it's it's definitely not, it's not for everyone. And, I think in today's market and society, everyone thinks that's just like the immediate jump. And, I was a creative director prior to doing that. I spent a lot of years doing other things prior to, I didn't just jump out of school and start it. So I would just, just encourage you to like follow your passions. And if it leads to something that turns into starting a startup or a great idea, go for it.
Thank you, Bobby. That's great. I'm gonna go to you, Marcos. How did the idea of starting your company came about?
The same as Bobby. Like it was not a putting together a business plan and we're gonna do this and spend money on that. No, it was just like for fun. Like it started while I was having a full-time job, and my brother, him and I are both together on this, and we always dreamt on doing something together. So he's basically the developer and I'm more the creative side. And so like we put our heads together and he started building this one app called Zia Live. It's basically a online radio. And at the time that was the beginning of Android. So it was really fun to put so many hours into that and then to realize, man, we could really start something here. And just a little side note there, then we got well, we did work on this other app, Flip a Clip. It was more for participating into a Samsung contest. But it was always for fun. And then as you get older and you get more experience at different businesses, me from being a motion graphic designer to ending as a interaction designer and more like the UX side, it was super cool to bring all that knowledge, learning that from others and seeing how I can get better, kind of like being the youngest and learning from the oldest. I'm the oldest, so I know that's my brothers do, hopefully. But they're a lot better than I am because of that concept, so always being open-minded. My dad always said, just listen, even if it's a horrible criticism, look at what could be constructive in there and just apply it. So yeah, it's been more of experience like that. And then once you start growing, then you can think about all the business plan, and because then you have to think about that and you bring people on board. But yeah, it's been more of a fun factor and putting like crazy amount of hours and being intentional. And like Bobby was saying, passion is the key word there.
Thank you, Marcus. Is kind of a similar than Bobby. I'm gonna go to Tim as well. How did the idea of you started several companies, but in general, how did the idea of starting a company comes about in your case?
I think we're all problem solvers, right? Especially in technology, because there's like, where's the problem? And then if you can convert that to find a need, then typically what happens is you have a vision of what the need, when it's fulfilled, how much people could benefit from it. And that is what's exciting for me, is like the final vision is what keeps moving along. And that journey of watching something form from nothing is super exciting, right? That's what I really enjoy watching. So for me in starting something, it's like, well, I think people need this. And if they do, why can't we be the ones that actually do it? And so I think sometimes for me personally, I needed a strong vision that excited me, that passion to include the risk, because depending on your stage in life, your risk tolerance is going to, completely shift and change. So I've gone from, yeah, let's start that, awesome, to wait, I actually do need a plan now. So it's things I've done both, right? Where I've seen the benefit in both. But I really believe in what Bob and Marcos were talking about in terms of that inherent passion and desire, where you feel this need and you're enjoying supplying that need, and then you need some people to come along and join you in that journey, and then before you know it, you're like, oh, I actually have to figure out how to run this thing. So it's a fun challenge. It could be really scary at times. Like we had one business that just completely was really hard. We were in it for 5 years. It did not end well, and out of that we hired a business coach, because we learned like there's so much, if you're willing to be vulnerable, there's so much to learn, and in converting yourself from someone who's typing in code to actually running an organization. So there's a lot of places to grow in starting an organization. There's a ton of different challenges that you need to grow. in. So it's a good thing.
Thank you, Tim. Alejandro, I think that you're an interesting case, and I wanted to have somebody like that as well, because not only takes a particular kind of person to start a company, it takes a particular kind of person to join a startup company. And but that's been my case in some of my endeavors. And so I'd like you to, if you could, to speak about that as well.
Yeah. So I come to ownership from a little bit of different perspective. I did not found the company. In fact, I always had the idea, growing up and starting learning the game business and everything. Oh yeah, I'm gonna own my own game company. That's the dream, right? After working in the game industry for a few years, a decade almost, I realized, man, this is a terrible business. Like no one should own a game company. It's terrible. And it wasn't until I realized that, number one, it was a group of people that I really knew and really trusted. And it's four partners total for a Ghostpunch, and each one of us complements the other. Without any one of us, I think the structure would fail. And especially, I was introspective, and I thought, if I was going to go and join and start a game company or be part of owning a game company, what would I want on my side? And my partners are the exact things that I would want on my side. One of my partners, he's wily, he's tenacious, he's out there, he's doing sales and he's networking, and he's in everyone's face in a way. I can't do that. That's just not what I do. And another guy, he's so organized and plans, and he handles all the scheduling and a lot of sticks. And another guy, he's super creative, and none of those things I necessarily bring to the table as one of my major strengths. What I do bring is understanding technology and being able to strategize technology and being able to build teams and build a department. So together is what working together is what makes it work for us. And if it wasn't that situation, I probably wouldn't be doing it. I would probably just go work for another company. After having the taste of ownership, obviously I prefer it because I do, because you get to control your fate a little bit more, and I trust myself more than I trust other people very often. Whether that's a strength or a weakness, I don't know, but it's working right now.
That's awesome. So the next question, and it will be the last question that I ask, and then we'll start to get questions from the audience, which is pretty awesome. And we can extend ourselves a lot, but we're gonna try to keep it succinct. And I'd like you to share what is the most rewarding thing about your company, and what is the most difficult thing about it. And I will start with Tim, because I very much want to, if you could share a little bit of the company that did end well, because I think it's important for people to understand. Also great when things go well. There's also things that cannot go as well, and people should know about those risks. But there's also a lot of rewards. But if you could, if you are okay and you feel good with it, love for you to share that, the most rewarding and the most difficult.
Yeah, I would say the most rewarding. So I came from large kind of institutions in terms of technology, right? So coming from Industrial Light and Magic, everything was provided for you in terms of tools, you contributed, but there was a lot of history, foundation, and infrastructure that was there when you started. So there was a lot of equipping for you. One of the things I take away from starting one of that particular business that didn't end well was that we were able to get up on our feet and provide a lot of that stuff to our employees ourselves. So it's kind of super risky, like, oh man, we don't have this, how are we going to do this? And all of a sudden things kind of came together and we were able to do a number of productions together. And so that was very satisfying to know that getting dropped off kind of alone, where it's just you and your business partners in a room just by yourselves with nobody there, can you actually get to the point where you can make something? And to watch that actually happen and grow is very, very satisfying. I think the most difficult thing is the transition from employee mindset to employer mindset. Because you begin, if you're doing it well, in my opinion, you begin to really worry about the livelihood of your people and your staff. You get to know their kids, and you want to make sure that families are eating and people are taken care of and their personal needs are being addressed, and that you're trying to deliver as much grace as you can with accountability and that balance in the workplace. And when you can begin to see earlier than a lot of other people that it's not going to work, and you know that you're going to have to let people go, or you're going to watch it kind of fold in on itself for a number of reasons, maybe it's your fault, maybe it's not, that is an incredibly difficult journey to walk through, to not be able to continue to provide for your employees. So that was a hard transition to deal with, to make this leap from employee mindset to employer mindset, with the desire to care for your employees, and then watch you not be able to do that because the business isn't going to be able to survive. I think that was the hardest part. That was the hardest time in my life, is to admit that I wasn't able to do that. But they're all adults, they're all taken care of, they all have jobs, everything's okay. But it's the challenging mindset of watching that transition happen and you're participating in it. That was hard. That was really hard.
I'm so glad you shared that, and I'm sure that others will have similar experiences. I went through that process myself a couple times, and you feel responsible for everything of your employees and their families, and you hear the stories. It's like, we're gonna do this. I'm gonna buy a house, and it's like, oh, now so-and-so's not buying a house, and it's all my fault, and it's a very difficult journey to have. And thank you for sharing that, Tim. It's fantastic. I'm gonna go to Bobby. What is the most rewarding thing and the most difficult thing about having your own company?
Yeah, the most rewarding aspect of it for me personally is cultivating people. Over the last 15 years of really, like I said, learning to get that part right. It's the most critical. Like, learning to be a good listener is one of the greatest leadership skills you can ever achieve. And so learning to be a good listener and then creating like a safe environment for your team to work in, and watching what blossoms from that. I think when you create that environment and watching what happens, I think is by far the greatest piece. Yeah. And, I agree with Tim on what is potentially on the harder side is when, you maybe don't make the right hire and you thought you did. And you got to kind of have those hard conversations of, how can you help steer someone? So typically if we let someone go, which is super rare, we have people that have been with us over 10 years now, some going on 12, but when we have to let someone go, it's always a long process. It's never like, oh, they did something wrong and we're letting them go. It's more of like, how can we figure out, is there a different seat on the bus that makes sense for them? Is there some other configuration that's going to make them succeed? Because no one wants to fail. So if someone's not, performing at a role, we really try to identify what that is and help them. And if we can't support that, a lot of times I'll be like, hey, I know I've got a good friend that works, here. Can I help you? Can I write a letter? Can I make a recommendation? So the hardest part for me is when, if I haven't done my proper due diligence and we've hired poorly, that's always a tough one for me, because people have made decisions. Like, I always say this, but when we have a town hall like once a month, and I always look around the room, and even after over a decade, I'm going on 15 years, I still look around and go, these people chose me. They believed in my mission. They believed in my organization. They're here. And like, we're all living life in this minute. and we are here together, that is huge. Like, and so I don't ever want to take that for granted. So people is always my number one priority.
That's pretty amazing. Thank you so much, Bobby, for sharing that. Alejandro, what is the most rewarding and the most difficult thing about owning your company? You're muted, by the way. Thank you.
So the most rewarding thing, aside from the people that we work, like I wouldn't be here if I didn't, love all of the individuals that we work with. Especially my partners and all the people we've hired. Like I enjoy going. It's one of the hardest things about this pandemic is just not going in and enjoying the company of the people that we work with. Right. We have to enjoy their company in a different way, like this through Zoom. But one of the interesting things about building games specifically is it's engineering, but it's engineering toward this sort of fuzzy goal, using unknown parts, right? And the goal in games obviously is generating fun with this weird concept of like interaction, and you never know how someone's going to interpret what you present. So it's like this crazy mix of art, science, and craft, just all kind of bundled up in there. And I found that, building tech departments and building a company specifically is a similar thing, where you have these like kind of fuzzy parts where everyone's completely different, but you're still like the confluence of all these personalities and skill sets and everything is put together to make this machine. And our machine happens to be a machine that makes other machines. I just find it fascinating. It's almost like, why Rube Goldberg machines are so,
similar thing.
You kind of zone out watching them. I find myself sitting back and looking at it the same way. All these people working together, making this amazing thing that everyone can enjoy. And that amazing thing is also something really weird and solving this unknown problem. So I think that's the most rewarding thing for me.
Is it also the most difficult, or you wanna?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. But in that it's fun, I like find it hard to say that things are fun or difficult because it just feels like playing almost. Yeah, no, the difficult part is when we have to balance that fun with the serious stuff, like making sure everyone gets paid and making sure everyone has the hardware that they need and making sure everyone has a seat to sit in, and the logistics of normal, like being an employee, and everyone has insurance, and should it be $1,000 deductible or $2,000 deductible, whatever the numbers are. That I think that's the most difficult part, because while 100% necessary, it's not like the core, the mission of the company. It's just
the business side of the business.
Yeah, I think that's the most difficult part in my opinion.
How about you, Marcos? What is the most rewarding and more difficult part of owning your business?
Yeah, so we're in a place where we continue to grow, and I'll focus on the difficult. Lately, the difficult is knowing that, you just can't do everything, and you have to allow others to be able to grow. And that's just bringing in people, it's just reaching out to you separately. Like, I need a developer, I need this and that. But it's important to have that mindset and trust others. It took me a long time in my past experience to trust leaders, to be able to say, okay, that's great. I can move on in my career, or I can trust that someone else will be able to take care of this and be okay with that. The most rewarding is to see, when you create something which was fun originally for us, never thought that even we could get to the point where we could be making money, even to that extent. But to see how younger kids can use it to express themselves, where you've seen people that were about to commit a suicide, and a tool like this became their their way to express how they were feeling, and through that they were able to get help. It's like the most rewarding thing when you see your app reaching further out there than what you even could imagine. Or to do a contest that we just did for this pandemic, we called it Beat COVID-19, and to see the engagement and how everybody contributed to share with the world, bringing peace and bringing also just helping everyone deal with the stress, especially younger kids. So that is one of the most rewarding pieces that we get from our users. And also the most difficult too sometimes is saying no sometimes to certain features. Obviously, that's why you do surveys and things like that. But I think we also try to listen to our users a lot. That's how Flip a Clip grew, because of that. And so the difficult sometimes is, am I putting enough time in there, and reminding yourself I need to be in that front line too, not just our customer service people, but also the people that created this, because if from the top it goes to everyone in that same feeling, that same culture, I think we will continue to grow. So anyways.
Oh, thank you so much. And thank you for sharing those incredible moments and experiences. And so I have a few questions from our audience, and I'm gonna say the questions, and you guys can signal me who wants to take it. So the first question is from Bob. He asked, when starting a company, how did you handle the fear of someone stealing your innovative concept while building a team and getting funding?
I can answer that a little bit.
Okay. Tim also raised his hand, so I gotta let you both answer it. So you go ahead, Alejandro, and I'll go to Tim.
Okay. I mean, in my opinion, you just need to be in the best position to execute on that concept. Our industry uses NDAs a lot, but NDAs only go as far as litigation will go. But if you are in the best, ideas are a dime a dozen. The key is to be in the best position to act upon that idea. And if you can get ahead of anyone else who wants to implement the same idea, then there's no reason for them to try to beat you out to it. That's kind of my stance on that.
All right, go ahead, Tim.
For us, it's been educating our lawyer on what we do. So we have documentation that protects our IP, and it's called a master services agreement that allows us to explicitly kind of show the client where the IP rights reside at the end of a contract, which can be overridden by supplementary documentation if the nature of the agreement needs to be a different kind of relationship where they need to own the source code. One of the challenges with writing code for other companies is that there's copyright derivative law that says if they take my source code and they, basically write a derivative from it, that they actually can, participate and own some. So there's a couple of different things to remember, right? There's jurisdiction, so the way California deals with it compared to the way Florida might deal with it. So a lawyer can help basically build a good moat that can give you a number of different drawbridges to let yourself out or let people in how you want to, so they can really help architect the flow of that IP rights. We always did with employees, for example, when you want to bring someone on, you can create a PIAA, which is a document that allows them to declare their inventions so that there's no future issues with employees. So there's a lot of ways to use good documentation to protect what you're trying to do to the extent of the law. So also, if you're thinking about something that's really IP based, is patent law is very important in terms of when you show the technology. There's actually a statute of limitations on how long you have to claim the patent when you first publicly show it and what's considered publicly declaring it. So there's a lot of education that you can get from your lawyer on how to help architect the surrounding area of your company and the way you form your company to help you do that. So, and that works also, and And honestly, if you're looking for funding, if this is a funding issue, if you don't have those things in place, the investors aren't going to come near you because they need to know that you're already thinking that way. So if you're looking for venture capital funds to pour in, you need to have all of those kind of things already executed before they'll start talking to you about, funding you.
Actually, you answered a question about funding that was tied to that one. So thank you. Next question, and it'd be great if Marco or Bobby answer it. And when did you know it was the right time to leave the 9 to 5 and go full time with your company? I'll start with you, Bobby, because I know that you started freelancing and then you share that with us.
Yeah, I think there's really no great answer to that. It's each person's going to be different, but for me, I just knew that I knew right away that it was going to start working. Like I was doing a little bit of freelancing very quickly. It was like, oh, this feels better to me. This feels more right. I think I should just be a contractor. So I left my job as a contractor, and I was just picking up jobs, random design jobs. And then a couple of those hit really hard. Like they were like, oh, we want to put you on like a 3-month retainer or 6-month retainer. And so I didn't waste much time. It was like within a month or two of picking up some of these contract works. I think you just got to know if it can sustain you. And if you have responsibilities that you need to uphold, you need to honor that. Make sure you're covering your bases. But I was single at the time, no kids, just got a house, but I'm like, I can float it. And so, it was a tough call, but at the same time, you start realizing like the jobs, they may not be as consistent. It's not like you're getting a new job every couple of days or a week. I'd be like, oh, that job was 10 grand. Like, okay, I didn't make 10 grand in my other job for, 3-4 weeks, whatever. So it's just like, I'm like, I can take that money and I can apply that and spread it out over time. So I just managed my money like I was getting a paycheck.
Right.
And I kept it and I'd put money away. And so it wasn't a tough jump, to be very honest. And you do good work, more work comes. So.
That's great. I'm gonna, Marcos, direct this next question directly to you, and
Okay.
because I think that you may have something to say about it. When starting out, is it better to have a team of employees or freelance out of work?
Yeah, I mean, I am in my family, everyone has their own business and they got started pretty early. I was the slowest one, but I think that was okay compared to them. It took me many years, over 10 years, to decide that I could move and do this full time. And not like Bobby, I was married. I'm married. I have, 3 kids. And it was that decision to make. So what I would suggest is you first focus, like everybody here, you focus on the passion that you have for what you do. You do the best. I had this one very old Italian guy with his broken English, and he told me when I was pretty young, he's like, listen, if you want to get to the top and you want to do something, he's like, if your job is cleaning up the bathroom, you do the best job that they will remember you for doing the best job cleaning in the bathroom. And even though that's a small thing, it taught me a lot to always do the best I could and to surpass expectations. And so through that, throughout the time, my brother went full time after working for a Motorola at the time when they were pretty big. And it was always dreaming to the point I was sick of just even talking about it. And, finally in 2017, we made it. And one mistake probably that I made was thinking about a plan B. And there's been this thing going around on LinkedIn about don't even plan plan B, just plan A, stick to it. It's so true. If you plan and you go forward and you know you're going to go for it, you know yourself. But to me, it took me a long time to get there. But it's the best move I've done. And then, do I need a team? It all depends. In my case with my brother, we didn't have to have a team of developers on the side and designers. We both complemented each other. So that was helpful. And it really allowed us to focus more on the creation than like, okay, who do we hire and doing interviews and all those things. Now we're at that point where we're hiring and looking, but it's a good experience.
Well, thank you. I'm gonna. We have covered most of the questions that came through, but there's a question that I always like to cover. Although I just got a couple of questions came in, but I want to make sure we cover this because it's important in the context of technology. This is called Tech Tuesday, and we're supposed to have a technology conversation as well. And I want all of you to answer it. What do you see today in technology that gets you really excited about the future? And I'll start with Tim. What is the technology that you see today that gets you really excited about the future?
I would say is that the barrier to entry for innovators seems to be pretty small today. And the ability for kids earlier on to start to learn technology through freer resources could make a huge impact in a number of different industries to benefit humanity, from the medical field to how technology can be used to advance just human existence. I'm more excited about the access to technology that kids have to learn it, to become not just consumers of it, but actually creators of it and innovators. That's a really good spot to be in as the human race in terms of just being able to access that and what to do with it. So barriers that compared to 100 years ago to start an oil company or whatever it might be, our barriers to entry are quite small, given capital requirements these days compared to the traditional industrial revolution kind of architecture. It's a totally different thing these days. So technology's brought us that, which I'm very excited about.
Oh, that's a great answer. I agree with you. We are at a time where technologies that have been in development for 20 or 30 years are all available at a very small price, if you will. Mm-hmm. And that's going to allow us to solve very complex problems that we were not able to solve before. And that's what gets me most excited about technology. And these days, I go with you, Bobby. What do you see in technology that gets you really excited about the future?
Just sort of the same what Tim's saying. So I'll try to piggyback off of something a little bit different. But I just really like the total connectivity that we are seeing globally, and the ability to leverage platforms and leverage AI, and also some pieces and parts of AR are pretty cool to me too. What that's going to open up.
Yeah. Marcos, is there anything about technology today that gets you really excited about the future?
Yeah, I think the opportunity, like Tim was saying, for if you have a good idea and you study it, and you could basically the opportunity to start something is a lot easier these days than it was in the past, and for countries like Argentina, many others, sometimes it's super difficult to get up high due to politics and all those things. But when it comes to like the internet side or the app world, it's really neat because there's no barriers there. So I like that. Also AI, I'm a big fan of Elon, especially with their research about, how they can help people reconnecting certain things in the brain. Just there's some great things coming up in the future. I think that I can't even imagine what it will look like, but
that's exciting, right?
Yeah.
Alejandro, is there anything or particular technology today that makes you really excited about the future?
I mean, there's a lot, to be honest. I mean, at Magic Leap, I was lucky enough to live in the future for a little while, where mixed reality is just like part of our of our life there at Magic Leap. So yeah, the stuff that's coming up with AR and VR and MR specifically is going to be amazing once that becomes more widespread. Artificial intelligence was brought up a lot, and I think there's some practical applications for that in game development coming up now with regards to animation workflows and developing terrain and a whole bunch of applications for AI that can be productized. That's going to make our games much bigger and more precise and more immersive, and that's not that far off. So that's really exciting as well.
All right, so we're getting close to the end here, and I would love you guys to offer some words or advice for those out there thinking about starting their own tech company. And I'll start with you, Marcos. What would you tell somebody that is thinking about starting their own company?
You just have to believe it. People are going to tell you you can't. Also listen and take the good and the bad, be open to be able to listen and apply it. And also just, if you have the passion and you just continue to fight for it and set minor short-term goals and try to get yourself to meet others who might be, surround yourself who are in a similar position, or maybe someone that already started a business, and pick their brains. It's okay if you don't ask, how are you going to learn to? So just stay active and keep learning. Technology, especially technology, you can never say you know it all, because it's constantly, there's new stuff, new things. So yeah, very vague, but it just follow your passion. That's what I did.
Thank you so much. Tim, is there anything you would like to say to somebody that is thinking about starting a tech company?
Yeah, from having both victories and failures, I would say that they're if you're going to focus on being afraid of failing in terms of what it might look like, you need to reframe your brain a little bit. I think both victories and failures are all additive to you. Depends on your attitude and how you want to process it. So even though you might experience some failures, you have to look at the journey and how you changed going through all of that. So hopefully that eliminates some of the fear that people have in starting. Well, what happens if it would fail? What happens if I do fail? Is that really a failure on me? And kind of reframing that in your mind to all the experiences can be really additive to growing yourself, so that the next time you want to do it, you'll have a lot more wisdom in what to do and what not to do. So it all has the potential for growth, for personal growth. It's a matter of how you just kind of frame it in your mind. So don't be afraid of the failure. It could actually be one of the best things.
Yeah, that's great. Alejandro, anything you would like to tell somebody that is thinking about starting their own company?
Yeah, I would say attention to detail is super important, but just as important is being comfortable with a lack of detail. And the way I look at it is just I like to keep things goal-based and understanding your goals, short, medium, and long-term goals, and then the details on what it's going to take to achieve that goal. Like Tim said, not as much focus on what happens if you fail that goal, but just really what it takes to reach each of those goals. And you really should know exactly what it will take to reach those goals. And those goals are going to spawn more goals, and those goals. But so it is a fine balance of finite attention to detail and also comfort with a certain lack of detail.
That's great advice, actually. Imperfect information is something that you have to be very comfortable with. Bobby, I'm going to close with you. What would you tell somebody that's is thinking about starting their own company?
I'd say you have to be daring. You do a little bit. like, you know, there has to be a catalyst. There has to be something that starts the flame, the fire. I mean, we are all graduates from Full Sail. Full Sail was not built on guarantees. Full Sail was a very daring vision and dream, and it takes courage. And I think it's that same courage and attitude and aptitude that took to build such a great organization as Full Sail. You kind of got to have that. You got to be a visionary. You got to believe in what you're saying. Like, you know, like Marcos was saying, you're going to get a lot of naysayers. You're going to get all the people that say, man, what are you doing? Why would you try that? You know, and you have to believe in yourself at the end of the day. You've got to make that call. So I would just encourage you to just be daring.
Wow. Thank you so much. So I want to thank all of you, Alejandro, Bobby, Marcos, and Tim, for taking time to be part of this very exciting conversation. And for those of you out there, I'd like to invite you for next Tuesday when we're going to have another edition of Tech Tuesday, the future about tech, the trends that are going to affect everything. And that is on Tuesday on the 16th on the same time. Thank you very much, and have a great rest of the day.
I want to thank everyone for giving us the break last week so that we can pause for the Black Lives Matter. So thank you guys.
Yes.
Thank you for understanding.
No, no problem. Thank you for everybody that came back. That's for sure.
Yeah.
So we're going to say goodbye to our friends in Facebook, and you're gonna ask you guys to stay here.